ComSpark. We are live here in Cambridge, Massachusetts at MIT, attending the Chief Data Officer Quality Symposium, where the world leaders in data have gathered. My name is Matthew DeRamo. I'm your guest host today. Joining me is Matt Kobe, Vice President of Business Strategy and Analytics with the Chicago Bulls. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great. How you doing?
Doing all right. Appreciate you making some time for us.
Not a problem. Happy to do it.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you a handful of questions. I'd say let's kind of jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So what has data unlocked for your organization that's brought the most value?
Yeah, so I think just to give a little bit of background before we hop in. So the business analytics function at the Bulls is about 5 years old. So I've been there for that entire duration. When I started, we were a team of one. It was myself, and now we're up to 7 full-time folks just on the business side of data analytics and strategy. And so as we think about data, we think about it in a couple different facets, but the data that adds the most value to us is the customer data. Sure. And so we've, over the last couple of years, have sort of changed our thought on customer data. Like we certainly do third-party data appends and all those sorts of things to enrich the data set that we have, but we've really invested in actual boots on the ground from a service component, so that way people are actually building relationships with our customers and in tune gathering data you would never get from a data append or a survey or anything like that. And so I think where it adds the biggest value is as we look at like customer retention, and obviously we're trying to minimize churn year to year with our season ticket holders. Having that service team and those boots on the ground and then entering all that data into our CRM system has been invaluable as we sit around and come up with strategies about how do we think about renewing a certain set of season ticket holders, and are there certain experiences that we think we can deliver that would add so much value that it would be a no-brainer for them to renew their membership with us. And so our goal is to, our purpose at the Bulls is to inspire and unite people through legendary experiences, and we know scaling legendary experiences is really tough. And so what we're trying to do is unlock what is the true motivation for people engaging with the Bulls, and then how do we deliver experiences to meet those motivations.
That's great. So let's step away from the consumer side and let's look internal within the Bulls organization. Of course. You're going to run across a lot of different individuals that have a varying degree of comfort when it comes to the analytics of the business, right? So how do you ensure insights are communicated effectively and drive ultimate action within the organization?
Yeah, it's been a learning,
Sure.
Certainly, because I came from the consulting world where either you're working with fellow consultants or you're working with people at the client that sort of get it, and you didn't have that hurdle. At the Bulls and in sports in general, like historically, people have grown up in the ticket sales world and then have blossomed in other areas of the business. And so you've had these people that have just only known sport. And I think more and more you're starting to see sports teams run more like a true business, and they're bringing people from the outside and bringing those smart ideas, but you still have these folks that only know sport and they've only seen sport. And so I think what I've learned the most is you have to bring people along for the journey. So if you're doing all of the work and you get to the end and you think you have the right answer and all they're seeing is your perception of the quote-unquote right answer, that's where I've had the most friction, because they're not part of that journey to get to that answer. And so I've spent a lot more time up front educating them on here's why we're doing this, here's how we're thinking about it, here's the data we are looking at. Getting there, it's always going to be part art, part science, right? We've got the science, they have the years of experience, which is more of the art. And so trying to marry those two throughout the process, so when we get to the end, it's not analytics idea versus someone else's idea. It's an organizational idea that we go out and execute.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that experience and that vision within the organization, kind of working the way through, tickets I've always viewed as kind of the lifeblood of any sporting organization.
It still is, yeah.
Right. So kind of working through that model, I can definitely see how that blossoms more as an organizational idea versus, as you said. So perfect. So how does your organization think about customer segmentation then, right? And have you been able to effectively deploy it?
Yeah, so I think different phases. So when I first got there, I think we largely talked mainly transactional segmentation, which is you have your season ticket holders, you have people that buy individual game tickets, you have groups that come out that buy group tickets. And we thought very transactional of our customer base. And then we started getting better at the demographic side, right? So let's use data appends and things like that to get a better understanding of the demographic base of our audience. And I think what we're starting to realize over the last probably year and a half is that knowing those two pieces of data isn't nearly enough to differentiate your message to existing consumers or potential consumers. And so I think the path that we're trying to go down is more of kind of a, like I mentioned, motivation or needs-based segmentation, which is like at the core, why is someone engaging with the Bulls? Are they engaging because they want that community feel of sport and they want to come out to a Bulls game and wear their Red Bull shirt and engage with other Bulls fans of that nature? Or are they coming out to the game because they're coming out with their family or they're coming out with 4 buddies? And the game is almost like a thing that's going on in the background, but really what they're doing is having a beer and BSing, and that's sort of, they're in it for the entertainment and everything that goes, everything that goes around the game, right? And then you've got your business fans that have a different agenda, right? They're entertaining clients and they're trying to advance their business. And you've got other folks in basketball and every sport that just love the game of basketball. Like they're not necessarily, they just happen to live in Chicago, so they go to a Bulls game, but they love following the game of basketball. And so we're trying to think, if you're communicating or delivering a ticket package, for instance, to a person that is only in it for the entertainment piece, you're going to message that very differently than someone who follows the game of basketball and follows the stats and knows who's in the running for the MVP and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely. And I think what we're trying to get to is how do we get a controlled set of segments that we can actually create differentiated products and differentiated experiences that meet their needs, and it becomes less of a hurdle to communicate the value that it'll deliver because we're speaking their language as opposed to kind of a one-size-fits-all approach.
Make it meaningful, absolutely. You're going to have more of an impact.
Right.
I can absolutely see that. So what broader trends then, or specifically trends in sports, do you see impacting data analytics in the next 3, 5, 10 years?
It's funny because at this conference, and hearing these big companies talk, you realize, I think it might have been Walmart who said, they have 1,500 people on their team, and I've got 6, and so
7. Don't sell yourself
7,
short.
But we're just as big as a global brand as Walmart is, right? So that's certainly a challenge, and I think where the challenge lies is as you get this influx of new data, it's how do you manage it and how do you actually use it and deploy it. It's great to have the data, but again, if you're not using it effectively, it becomes hard. And so where I see that big influx of data coming, at least in sport, is as the transition to mobile becomes more almost forced in many ways. As more teams move to mobile tickets, you have to use your phone to enter the stadium. And if you're using your phone to enter the stadium, then maybe you're using your phone to buy concessions and you're using your phone to buy retail. And when you go home, you're using your phone to watch highlights. And all of a sudden you start to create these different connection points and get a better view of how that fan engages with your brand. The challenge is all of those data points are coming from different spots, right? And so how do you create a system that connects those dots very easily, so when you have a small team, you can be efficient in identifying potential high value fans that you didn't even know, or potential future fans that, hey, this person comes actually quite frequently, maybe we should call them and give them an option for an 11 game package instead of the 4 or 5 single games they buy throughout the year. So I think mobile will certainly have a big impact. Gambling will be interesting. So Illinois recently passed the sports gambling. Many rules and regulations are still being defined, but I think it may not come necessarily from a data standpoint in terms of us knowing who is betting on certain teams, the Bulls or what have you, but it's definitely going to drive higher engagement, and it's going to drive higher engagement probably on a mobile device again. And so how are we harnessing the power of sports betting through different engagement levers in order to capture more data about a fan and try to understand those different personas I described to see where someone might slot in. So those are the 2 big ones. I think longer term, you're starting to see ticketing companies look at blockchain. Like Ticketmaster invested in a blockchain company about 6 months ago. So blockchain has smart contracts, things like that. It could have a purpose in sport. Sports tends to be a little bit later adopters of that type of technology, so we'll let others figure it out before we try it. But I think it's going to be fascinating. I mean, as you look at how arenas are being built and kind of continuing to enrich that experience in arena while also having virtual reality and other elements start to become more quote unquote mainstream, I guess, to an extent. How do you balance that as a team having somebody in China be able to sit courtside for a Bulls game with virtual reality
yeah.
is amazing. But then someone in Chicago, how do you continue to convince them that the arena experience delivers above and beyond sitting on your couch and watching?
And I've always felt that they've done such a good job at that already, because the 2 hours before the game, just being at the stadium with all the things going around in the hallways or out in the parking lots, there's quite a bit of experience just even leading up to the actual game.
It is, yeah. So. And that's where, kudos to our ownership who have continued to invest in the United Center, which is where we play our home games, and truly trying to make that a destination, because they know that that's going to be important in the long term. So sports is an exciting place.
Yeah,
it's exciting because it's sport, but even on the business side, there's a lot of things happening that are really exciting over the next few years.
Well, great, Matt. I want to thank you again for spending some time with me and sharing your insights.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So for more information on today's interview, please visit ComSpark.tech.